Hey guys, how's it going? This is Watch, and in this video we'll be doing a direct head-to-head comparison between the Samsung Gear S and the Moto 360. Now, here is what I consider to probably be one of the better Google Android Wear devices, the Moto 360, and one of the most powerful smartwatches in the marketplace, the Samsung Gear S. So if you're interested in how these two wearables compare against each other, this is a perfect video for you. So let's get right into this. Now, in terms of the physical dimensions and design, you can see that both the Moto 360 and the Gear S are completely different in terms of overall design. We have a circular formation on the Moto 360, and we have that nice curved display that goes right around your wrist on the Gear S. Now, physically, you can see the Moto 360 is a lot more compact than the Gear S. It only measures about 46 millimeters in terms of its diameter, versus the Gear S measures about 58.1 millimeters in terms of its height, and about 39.9 millimeters in terms of its width. And in terms of thickness, the Moto 360 measures about 11.5 millimeters versus 12.5 millimeters on the Gear S. The same thing goes for weight. We have the Moto 360 being lighter at 49 grams and the Gear S being a little bit heavier at 67 grams. Now, in terms of build quality materials, the Moto 360 has a nice metal chassis that pretty much covers the entire device, and the Gear S is made out of polycarbonate plastics, which is quite durable, but it's certainly not as nice of a build quality as we find in the Moto 360. Durability wise, both smartwatches are rated for IP67, so they're both dust and water resistant. In terms of day-to-day durability, because the Gear S is a large form smartwatch, it is a little bit more vulnerable to different hazards in the environment, so you definitely want to be careful with it if you are using it all day, versus the Moto 360, because it's more compact. I think more people could be more comfortable with wearing the Moto 360 all the time. Now, in terms of comfortability, I think the Gear S is very comfortable on the wrist because of its curved form factor. It really forms well to anybody's wrist out there. The rubberized plastic band is also very nice on the skin, and there's no real irritation or anything like that, and it is sweat resistant as well. Now, in terms of control interfaces, you can basically control both devices using the capacitive touch display, or even use some voice commands to control the device. There's also one standalone button on the Moto 360 that functions as a power standby button, and on the Gear S we have a home button very similar to what you would find on their Galaxy smartphones, which allows you to go back to the home screen no matter where you are in the device, and you can customize the double tap functionality of the home button to do specific things like bring up your S voice, open up specific applications, make a memo, etc. Now, in terms of display, we can see that the Gear S has probably one of the most advanced and largest display possible on any smartwatch. It has a 2-inch display versus the 1.56-inch display on the Moto 360, and we have a higher resolution of 360 by 480 versus 320 by 290 on the Moto 360. Additionally, we have an OLED display on the Gear S, so you can basically turn off regions of the display that don't need to be lit up, so that will definitely improve battery life. Also, the colors and overall vibrancy of the display is better, and couple this OLED technology with a curved display, we have a pretty special experience that you get from this particular smartwatch. Now, aside from the look itself, the curved display I think adds a little bit to the functionality. When you are browsing and controlling the menu systems on the Gear S, you do get an interesting tactile sensation because it's almost like using the scroll wheel on your mouse. It feels very natural and very intuitive. And with that larger screen, I do find myself enjoying the Gear S a little bit more in terms of day-to-day usage, because the amount of screen real estate you get is very nice to use. You also get more capacitive touch points than the Moto 360, and sometimes the Moto 360 feels a little bit cramped, and there's been several occasions where it had a hard time recognizing my touchscreen commands. Now, in terms of sensors, both are pretty evenly matched. They both have gyroscopes, accelerometers, and a compass, so you could basically flick your wrist up to you and it'll wake up the display so you can start seeing whatever notifications you have or whatever the time is. They also have a barometer, GPS, and a heart rate monitor, so that is an important feature for a lot of people that might be using these smartwatches for their daily working out routines, or people who want to measure how many steps they taken in a day. And they both have their own apps to kind of cover those health related activities. Moving on, in terms of the internal specifications, we do find a Pretty big difference between these two. Now, the Moto 360 is using a specialized Texas Instruments CPU, which is a single core processor that's clocked around 1 gigahertz. It has 512 megabytes of RAM, alongside with the Gear S that has a dual core processor that's clocked at about 1 gigahertz, and that also has 512 megabytes of RAM. Now, I don't have any serious complaints about the Moto 360's responsiveness and overall kind of experience you get using Android Wear on it, but it's certainly one of the slower Android Wear devices you can get out there. The processor is certainly kind of underpowered compared to what you would typically find in most other Android Wear devices, so it's definitely not as smooth and as responsive as premium smart devices such as the Gear S, which is probably one of the most powerful smartwatches out there. It has a very powerful processor that can pretty much handle all sorts of different apps. In fact, if you go back a couple of years, the internal components that are in the Gear S is probably similar to some of the internal specifications that you saw in the first generation Galaxy smartphones. And I think it definitely needs that internal horsepower because the Gear S is one powerful little miniaturized smartphone. So you can actually put a nano SIM in there and make calls, receive text messages, send text messages. You can have apps that allow you to do a whole bunch of email functionality and even social network functionality. And there's a growing app store. But one problem that I do have with the Samsung Tizen app store that's currently available right now is that a lot of the apps are paid. That's one kind of contrast that what you find between the Pebble store and what you find in Android Wear, which is kind of upsetting that most of the apps in the marketplace are there for Samsung and the developers to make money, which is definitely not bad, but I'm seeing a trend of most of the apps being at least above $2. Now, in terms of the network compatibility on the Gear S, it can both work with GSM networks as well as HSDPA network. In fact, there's a lot of carriers right now, such as AT&T, that are selling the Gear S. I'm actually using the worldwide unlocked version from Korea, and I had no problems using it in my Canadian network. Now, talking about the software features on the Moto 360 and the Gear S, we have Android Wear on the Moto 360, which is particularly designed for a universal platform of different smartwatches and smart devices. So this is quite a generic platform that Google has developed alongside a whole bunch of other developers such as Motorola to kind of optimize the whole philosophy of what a smartwatch should do and how it should work. And it's a fairly simple OS and quite limited in terms of the capabilities compared to what you find on Tizen on the Gear S. But really, if you have any Android smartphone right now that's just a couple of years old, you will have no issues with compatibility. Unfortunately, if you have an iPhone, you're kind of out of luck with both of these devices. But I am a big fan of Android Wear. I do like the fact that it concentrates on some of the OK Google voice recognition software, which is probably the best in the business in terms of voice recognition. And overall, in my experience, I do like the voice recognition system better in the Moto 360 than on the S voice system on the Gear S. Now, speaking of the Gear S, in terms of OS, as we mentioned before, it's running Samsung's own mobile operating system, which is Tizen, which is certainly a very powerful standalone OS that can certainly serve a lot of different features, including some multimedia features, so you can use this as a dedicated MP3 player and as a photo viewer and video viewer. You also have a whole bunch of different apps, as we mentioned before, in the apps library, enabling you to play a whole bunch of different type of games. It even has a full Opera browser, which definitely works a lot better than anything you would find in Android Wear. Now, all of these things really brings us down to one of the biggest issues I have with the Gear S, and that's compatibility. You need to have a Samsung smartphone that's just a couple of years old. If you have even a Samsung phone from, let's say, 4 or 5 years back, you're kind of out of luck. So if you have the Samsung Galaxy S5, Note 4, Note 3, you should be fine. Older devices, you definitely have to check on compatibilities, but every other device is kind of out of the question in terms of compatibility. Now, this is certainly a big problem for a lot of Android users out there, but Apple users are kind of used to the exclusivity and compatibility issues, because if you take a look at the Apple Watch, that's going to pretty much only work with Apple products, and it's not surprising that Samsung is is kind of following in Apple's footsteps. Now, on the flip side, taking a look at the Moto 360, I think the weakest aspect of it is definitely its battery life, which in capacity is about 320 milliamp hours. And in my day-to-day usage, I get about 12 to 15 hours of it if you're using it on a light basis. If you're a heavy-duty user and you get a lot of notifications, you kind of struggle throughout your 12-hour day. However, I do like the charger that comes with the Moto 360, which looks very sleek on pretty much everyone's desk, and that's using induction technology to charge your device wirelessly. Now, the Gear S is not a lot better in terms of battery life, but it is certainly usable throughout most of your 12-hour day. Now, even if you're using it on a heavy, intense basis, it has excellent battery management technology as well as that organic LED display, which will definitely improve your battery performance. The other great thing I like about the Gear S is that it comes with a charging dock that doubles as an actual battery extender. It has a built-in 350 milliamp hour battery, so when your Gear S battery is dying, you can go ahead and clip on and use it right off the bat. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is the price. Now, price is always fluctuating here or there depending upon sales and at what time you're actually watching this video, but currently right now, as they stand, the Moto 360 is about $249.99 and the Gear S retails for about $329.99 off contract. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different capabilities that you're going to be paying extra on the Gear S for, mainly including the fact that it is pretty much a smartphone in a miniaturized form. So that price is certainly justified in my regard, but you definitely have to make sure that you have a Samsung device that you're going to be using with the Gear S, because every other Android device is a little bit tricky to run versus the Moto 360 has a lot better compatibility. But on that, guys, that's really it. I would love to hear your particular thoughts on how these two compared against each other, because there's a lot of different advantages that each smartwatch presents. I'm a huge fan of the design of the Moto 360. I think it's the sleekest looking smartwatch out there, but I am a huge fan of using the Gear S on a day-to-day basis. I'm a Samsung user, so that's really no issue in terms of compatibility, but there are some kind of limitations of what the Gear S is capable, and it might be not designed for everyone in mind. But love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if you like the video. That really helps us out. And check back to our channel for our ultimate smartwatch showdown, where we take a look at all of the popular smartwatches that are currently available right now and that we've personally reviewed, and tell you which one is best. So definitely make sure you're subscribed to our channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you later. Take care.